Thank you for joining me today as we delve into a story of deception, resilience, and ultimate self-discovery. If you enjoy gripping tales that explore the complexities of relationships and life's unexpected turns, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your engagement inspires us to share more stories like this one. The first time I met Olivia, she was unlike anyone I had ever encountered. Her laughter was infectious, her smile radiant, and her presence magnetic. I was smitten, utterly convinced that I had stumbled upon my soulmate. Over the years, my love for her grew deeper, and I thought hers for me did as well. Our relationship unfolded like a dream. Dinners under the stars, long walks on the beach, whispered promises of forever. We married within 2 years of meeting, and I believed we had it all. The years that followed felt like pages ripped from a fairy tale. A cozy home in the suburbs, fulfilling careers, and plans for a future that seemed as solid as the foundation of our house. But fairy tales rarely last forever. Looking back, the cracks were subtle, nearly invisible, like hairline fractures in an otherwise flawless vase. A late night at the office here. A sudden disinterest in our usual Friday movie nights there. Little things I chalked up to the pressures of life and work. Olivia was always ambitious, so I didn't think twice when she threw herself into her new role as a project manager at a high-profile tech firm. I admired her drive. But admiration turned to suspicion when the late nights became more frequent and the excuses thinner. Another meeting ran over, she'd say, or the team needed me to stay and troubleshoot an issue. One evening, as I reheated the dinner I had prepared hours earlier, I noticed her phone buzzing on the kitchen counter. Normally, I wouldn't invade her privacy, but something about the way she'd guarded her phone lately made my curiosity difficult to ignore. I glanced at the screen, and there it was. A message from someone saved as a "Tonight was amazing. Can't wait to see you again." My stomach churned. I wanted to believe it was a harmless message, a misunderstanding. But deep down, a seed of doubt had been planted, and it would grow faster than I ever could have imagined. The days that followed were a blur of denial and rationalization. Surely Olivia wouldn't betray me. We had 7 years of marriage behind us, a partnership built on trust, or so I thought. I tried to shake the unease, but it clung to me like a shadow. Then came the night that shattered the illusion. Olivia was out late again, citing another impromptu meeting. I tried calling her, but the calls went unanswered. Hours ticked by, and worry turned to dread. Unable to sleep, I paced the living room, the silence of the house deafening. It was close to midnight when I heard her car pull into the driveway. I watched through the window as she stepped out, her hair disheveled, her expression distant. She didn't see me watching as she adjusted her coat, revealing a glimpse of an outfit far more glamorous than what she typically wore to the office. When she walked through the door, I was waiting in the hallway. "Long meeting?" I asked, my tone sharper than I intended. She froze, startled by my presence. "Yeah," she replied quickly, avoiding my gaze. It went later than expected. I wanted to confront her then and there, to demand an explanation for the message, the late nights, the lies. But something held me back. I needed proof, something undeniable. Over the next few weeks, I became a detective in my own marriage, piecing together fragments of a puzzle I never wanted to solve. I started noticing patterns. The nights she claimed to be working late often coincided with withdrawals from our joint account for upscale restaurants and boutique hotels. Her demeanor shifted too. She became distant, irritable, as if she were a stranger inhabiting the body of the woman I had loved for years. Then one day the proof fell into my lap. I was organizing some files on our shared computer when I stumbled upon a folder I hadn't seen before. Inside were photos. Olivia, arm in arm with a man I didn't recognize, laughing and gazing at him with the kind of adoration I thought was reserved for me. My hands trembled as I closed the folder. The weight of betrayal hit me like a tidal wave, pulling me under. 7 years. 7 years of love, trust, and commitment, now reduced to ashes. That evening, as Olivia walked through the door, I was no longer the man she had left behind hours earlier. I was someone new, someone who had seen the truth. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. She hesitated, sensing the gravity of my words. What about? I looked her in the eye, holding up my phone with the photos displayed on the screen. This. Her face went pale, and for a moment she said nothing. The silence stretched between us like an unbridgeable chasm. The silence following my revelation was suffocating. Olivia's eyes darted between the photos on my phone and my face, as if searching for a way to deny what was undeniably true. But the weight of the evidence left no room for excuses. "Where did you find those?" she finally whispered, her voice trembling. "Does it matter?" I replied, my tone colder than I intended. "The question is, how long has this been going on?" She hesitated, her lips pressing into a thin line. "It's not what it looks like," she said, but the words sounded hollow even to her. I let out a bitter laugh. "Really? Because it looks like my wife has been sneaking around behind my back for months. Maybe longer." Her shoulders slumped, and she averted her gaze. "It's complicated," she murmured. "Then uncomplicate it," I snapped. "I deserve the truth, Olivia." What followed was a fragmented confession, each word chipping away at the remnants of our once solid foundation. The man in the photos was a colleague, a charming, wealthy executive who had swept her off her feet with grand gestures and promises of excitement. It had started innocently, she claimed. Shared lunches, inside jokes, late-night work sessions. But somewhere along the lines had blurred. Listening to her, I felt a surge of emotions. Anger, betrayal, heartbreak. But beneath it all, a sense of clarity began to take shape. This wasn't just about her infidelity. It was about the cracks in our marriage that had allowed it to happen. "You had a choice, Olivia," I said, my voice heavy with disappointment. "You could have talked to me. We could have worked through whatever was missing. But instead you lied. You betrayed me." Tears streamed down her face as she pleaded for forgiveness, promising that she would end the affair and do whatever it took to rebuild our marriage. But her words felt like empty promises, and I wasn't sure if I could ever trust her again. That night, I slept on the couch, unable to face the woman who had broken my heart. The once cozy home we had built together now felt like a prison, its walls echoing with the ghosts of our shattered dreams. The days that followed were a blur of strained conversations and painful silences. Olivia tried to make amends, cooking my favorite meals, leaving heartfelt notes, and even suggesting couples therapy. But no gesture could erase the image of her with another man, or the betrayal that had brought us to this point. One evening, as I sat alone in my car after work, I found myself scrolling through old photos on my phone. Pictures of vacations, anniversaries, and quiet moments that once felt so full of love and joy. The contrast between those memories and my current reality was staggering. I realized then that I had a choice to make. I could let this betrayal define me, allowing it to consume my every thought and emotion, or I could take control of my own story. The first step was setting boundaries. I told Olivia that I needed space to process everything, and I moved into the guest room while I figured out what I wanted. She agreed, reluctantly, and for the first time in years I began to focus on myself. I threw myself into work, taking on extra projects and reconnecting with colleagues I had lost touch with. I joined a local gym, channeling my anger and frustration into physical activity. And slowly but surely, I began to rediscover parts of myself that I had long neglected. Meanwhile, Olivia tried to prove her commitment to repairing our marriage. She ended her relationship with the other man, cutting all ties and even leaving her job to remove herself from temptation. She apologized repeatedly, her words tinged with genuine regret, but I remained cautious. Trust, once broken, is not easily rebuilt. One evening, she approached me with a proposal, a weekend getaway to a cabin in the mountains, a chance to escape the chaos and focus on rebuilding our connection. Part of me wanted to refuse, to keep her at arm's length and protect my wounded heart. But another part of me, the part that still remembered the woman I fell in love with, wondered if this might be the fresh start we desperately needed. After much deliberation, I agreed. "But this doesn't mean everything is okay," I warned her. "This is a chance to talk, to figure out where we stand. Nothing more." She nodded, her eyes filled with hope. "That's all I'm asking for." As we packed for the trip, I couldn't shake the feeling that this weekend would be a turning point, a chance to either salvage our marriage or finally let it go. The drive to the cabin was filled with an uneasy silence, broken only by the occasional sound of the GPS guiding us through winding mountain roads. Olivia glanced at me several times, as if searching for a clue to my thoughts, but I kept my gaze fixed on the road ahead. The cabin was nestled in a secluded clearing, surrounded by towering trees and the gentle hum of nature. It was the kind of place where the world felt distant, the distractions of daily life replaced by a serene, almost haunting stillness. As we unpacked, Olivia tried to lighten the mood. "Remember our trip to the Smoky Mountains?" she asked, her voice tinged with nostalgia. I nodded, a faint smile playing at my lips despite myself. That trip had been one of our happiest memories. Days spent hiking through lush trails, nights spent by the fire, sharing stories and laughter. But the weight of recent events made it hard to fully embrace the memory. We settled in for the evening, sharing a simple meal by the fireplace. The warmth of the fire filled the room, but the emotional distance between us remained. Finally, Olivia broke the silence. "Why did you agree to come here?" she asked, her voice soft but steady. I set down my fork, meeting her gaze. "Because I needed to know if there's anything left to save. And if there's any way I can ever trust you again." Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't look away. "I don't expect you to forgive me overnight," she said. "But I want to show you that I'm committed to making this right, no matter how long it takes." For the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to truly listen. Her words carried a sincerity that was hard to ignore, but the wounds of her betrayal were still fresh, and I wasn't ready to let my guard down completely. The next day we went for a hike along a nearby trail. The crisp mountain air and stunning views offered a welcome distraction from the heaviness that had settled between us. At one point, we stopped to admire a cascading waterfall, its roar drowning out the silence that had followed us since our arrival. "I've been thinking a lot about us," Olivia said, her voice barely audible over the sound of the water. "About what went wrong." I turned to her, waiting for her to continue. "I think I got caught up in the idea of something new, something exciting," she admitted, her expression filled with regret. "But it was a mistake. A terrible, selfish mistake. And I've realized that the life we built together is worth more than anything I could have found elsewhere." Her words stirred something in me, a flicker of the love I once felt for her. But love alone wasn't enough to erase the pain of betrayal. "That's a start," I said, my tone measured. "But it's going to take more than words to fix this." As the day wore on, we began to talk more openly, reflecting on the highs and lows of our marriage. I shared my own feelings of inadequacy, of being taken for granted, and she admitted to losing sight of what truly mattered. It was a painful conversation, but also a necessary one, forcing us to confront the flaws that had festered beneath the surface of our relationship. That evening we sat by the fire once more, this time with a bottle of sparkling water and a deck of cards. We played for hours, laughing and teasing each other in a way that felt almost normal. For a moment, it was as if we had stepped back in time to a version of ourselves untouched by betrayal. But as the night wore on, reality set in. The road to healing would be long and uncertain, and there were no guarantees that we would make it to the other side together. "I know this doesn't fix everything," Olivia said as we prepared for bed. "But I hope it's a step in the right direction." "It's a start," I replied, my voice heavy with exhaustion. "But we still have a long way to go." As I lay awake that night, listening to the crackle of the dying fire, I couldn't help but wonder if forgiveness was truly possible, or if the scars of betrayal would always linger, a reminder of what had been lost. The days after our cabin trip were tentative, like walking on a fragile bridge that could collapse at any moment. Olivia and I returned home with a renewed determination to work on our marriage, but the shadow of her betrayal loomed over every interaction. We began attending couples therapy, a step Olivia had suggested months ago but that I had resisted. Sitting in that small office, across from a calm and patient therapist, felt surreal. I was used to keeping my emotions bottled up, but now I was being asked to lay them bare in front of a stranger, and the woman who had caused me so much pain. The first few sessions were rough. Each question from the therapist felt like peeling back a layer of skin, exposing raw nerves that I wasn't ready to confront. But slowly the process began to help. "I need to know why," I said during one session, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and desperation. "Why wasn't I enough?" Olivia's face crumpled, tears streaming down her cheeks. "It wasn't about you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "It was about me, my insecurities, my need for validation. You've always been enough, but I didn't see it because I wasn't enough for myself." Her words were like a knife to the heart, but they also offered a glimpse of the truth I had been seeking. It wasn't an excuse, but it was an explanation, one that helped me begin to separate her actions from my own sense of self-worth. Outside of therapy, we established new routines to rebuild our connection. Every evening we set aside time to talk without distractions. No phones, no television, just us. Sometimes the conversations were light-hearted, reminiscing about the early days of our relationship. Other times they were heavy, delving into the pain and resentment that still lingered. One evening, Olivia surprised me with a box of old letters we had written to each other during our first year of dating. As I read through them, I was struck by the depth of our connection back then, the way we had been so open and vulnerable with each other. "I want us to get back to this," she said, her voice soft but resolute. "To a place where we can trust each other completely." "I want that too," I admitted. "But it's going to take time." Time became our most precious resource. I threw myself into rebuilding not just our relationship, but also my own sense of identity. I started taking classes in woodworking, a hobby I had always wanted to pursue but had never made time for. Olivia encouraged me, even helping me set up a small workshop in the garage. Meanwhile, she worked on herself, attending individual therapy sessions and journaling her thoughts. She shared some of her insights with me, and while it was difficult to hear about the depth of her struggles, it also helped me understand the internal battle she had been fighting. Our progress wasn't linear. There were days when the weight of everything was too much, when a simple misunderstanding would spiral into a heated argument. But there were also moments of genuine connection, like the time we spent an afternoon in the park, flying kites and laughing like kids. The turning point came during a weekend trip to visit my parents. It was the first time Olivia had faced them since the revelation of her affair, and I knew she was terrified. But she insisted on coming, saying she wanted to show them, and me, that she was committed to making amends. My parents were cordial but distant, their disappointment evident. Over dinner, my father asked Olivia a pointed question. "Why should we believe that you won't hurt him again?" Her response was quiet but firm. "Because I've learned the hard way what I almost lost. And I'll spend the rest of my life proving that I'm worthy of his forgiveness." Her honesty seemed to resonate with them, and by the end of the weekend, there was a sense of cautious acceptance. It wasn't a full reconciliation, but it was a start. Back home, I found myself reflecting on the journey we had been on. The pain, the growth, the tentative steps toward healing. There was still a long way to go, but for the first time I felt a glimmer of hope that we might actually make it. The weeks following our trip to my parents' house marked a subtle but significant shift in our relationship. For the first time in months, I began to see glimmers of the woman I had fallen in love with. Her humor, her kindness, her unwavering determination. And in return, I began to feel more like myself, shedding the bitterness and anger that had consumed me since her betrayal. But healing wasn't a straight line, and there were still days when the memories of her affair haunted me. On one such evening, I found myself sitting alone in my workshop, staring at an unfinished project. Olivia found me there, her expression a mix of concern and guilt. "Bad day?" she asked softly. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. She hesitated before stepping closer. "I know I can't take away the pain I've caused you," she said. "But I want you to know that I'm here, for the good days and the bad." Her words were simple, but they carried a weight that struck me deeply. For the first time I allowed myself to believe that maybe, just maybe, we could get through this together. Our therapist suggested we take a symbolic step to mark our progress, something that would help us move forward. After much thought, we decided to renew our wedding vows. It wasn't about erasing the past but about acknowledging it and choosing to build a future together despite it. The ceremony was small and private, held in the same park where we had exchanged our vows 7 years earlier. Olivia wore a simple white dress, And I wore the same tie from our wedding day, a small nod to the promises we had made and were now renewing. As we stood under the same oak tree, surrounded by the quiet beauty of nature, Olivia took my hands in hers. "I can't change the past," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "But I promise to honor you, to cherish you, and to never take you for granted again. You are my heart, and I will spend every day showing you how much you mean to me." Her words brought tears to my eyes, and when it was my turn to speak, I found myself overwhelmed with emotion. "Trust is fragile," I began, my voice thick with feeling. "It can be shattered in an instant, but it can also be rebuilt with time and effort. I don't know what the future holds, but I know this: I choose us. I choose to believe in what we can be, not just what we've been." When we exchanged rings, it felt like the closing of one chapter and the opening of another. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of peace, a fragile but undeniable hope that we could create a new version of our relationship, one built on honesty and resilience. As we walked away from the ceremony, hand in hand, I knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would still be moments of doubt and pain, but there would also be moments of joy and love. And for the first time in a long time, I was willing to fight for those moments. The journey of forgiveness is never straightforward. It's messy and complicated, filled with setbacks and triumphs. But if there's one thing I've learned through this experience, it's that love is not a feeling, it's a choice. And today, I choose to move forward one step at a time, with a woman who has taught me the true meaning of commitment. Thank you for being a part of this deeply personal story. I hope it resonated with you and offered some insight into the complexities of love and forgiveness. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to stay connected for more stories like this one. Your support means the world to me.